I want to thank you all for being here. I have to tell you that we've had an hour of very, in diplomatic terms, frank conversation and exchange of views. Tom Prendergast, who is the MTA chair, joined, as well as Joe Giulietti, Metro-North President, who has substantial Connecticut roots. I have made it perfectly clear, as I think was evident to both of the gentlemen, that they have lost the confidence of many of our riders and our citizenry in the state of Connecticut, and it is their job to earn it back. To earn it back by on-time performance, to earn it back by reliability, and to earn it back by getting a reputation for safety. They accept that obligation. They understand that in many ways the people of Connecticut have been let down. And they understand it has to be their primary mission to restore service and restore the trust which this railroad once had, and relatively recently, with the people of Connecticut. That's going to require ongoing communications on a regular basis. And when I say communications, I mean factually based, real communications with real timelines for products and services to be delivered. It's going to have to include what we've agreed to be a 100-day plan for how the 100 days from whenever we finish that plan, and presumably in the next 2 weeks, how that's going to proceed with respect to the Metro-North. They have to be communicating that plan on an ongoing and regular basis. We have stressed with them that the lack of communications in so many ways has led to this level of mistrust and distrust between their ridership in Connecticut. I also have to say that we have reached some agreements. For instance, major projects that have the potential, if they go wrong, of disrupting service, will be independently reviewed. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. We have an agreement that independent review before the line or power is put in jeopardy ever again will take place. I will note for you that we completed on time a project in Greenwich. We promised it would be done in 16 days' time. We had 2 snowstorms in between. We were able to accomplish that even in spite of those storms, and we made sure that there was triple redundancy with respect to service. That's what we should expect from our Metro-North colleagues on this line as well. So I think it was frank. I think it was honest. I think they know the hole they've dug, and I think they're going to come up in hopefully 2 weeks' time with a plan to make real progress in the state of Connecticut. I also want to say that I assured them that if they do the things that they're promising to do, with respect to service, with respect to safety, with respect to communications, then they can anticipate that we will continue to be the good partner that we have been in the past. This is not about who can raise their voice the loudest. It's about who can lead and make sure that we can restore the trust of the ridership and the citizenry of the state of Connecticut. I have to say that I appreciate that discussion. I appreciate Mr. Prendergast's willingness to meet with me on an ongoing basis. It is a pleasure to have met Joe as well, and we welcome him to his job. I think he understands the significance of the role that he must now play. With that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Prendergast, who is the MTA chair, who himself has a broad level of experience in transportation issues, has led a number of organizations, has great familiarity. As Joe said, it's interesting working for a guy in the railroads who knows as much about the railroads as he does. Mr. Prendergast.
Thank you, Governor. As the Governor stated, we stand aligned with the Governor and the people of Connecticut in focusing on restoring Metro-North service to the levels it once had. We are pleased to be able to announce Joe Giulietti as the leader of that organization. As you all know, an organization follows its leader by example, and someone with the requisite knowledge and experience that Joe has, we're fortunate to have. He's got almost 40 years of experience in railroading, and he's a native of Connecticut, was born and raised here, and he spent the first part of his career working for Conrail and Metro-North before he went down to work in Florida. So he's got a different perspective as he comes back. But he's exceptionally knowledgeable. He's one that leads by example, and I think you'll see that as we move forward in terms of doing what we need to do to restore Metro-North to the levels it once was at. Joe?
I want to start by saying that I'm very appreciative to the Governor I'm very appreciative to Jim Redeker, and you've already heard how appreciative I am to Tom Prendergast and the MTA. Tom and I go back a good 20 or 30 years, and yes, it is well over 40 years that I've been involved with railroading. I appreciate having somebody that has been there, has done it, has led railroads, and beyond that has gone to both the public and the private sector. And it's been very interesting for me. I left Metro-North in '98. We were known, and the governor even talked about what it was like to commute back in the early '80s when I was a superintendent on the New Haven and the Harlem lines, and the issues that we had back then and the problems that we had back then. And having started then, and then when I left in '98 to go down to Florida, I can honestly say to you that it was a railroad that we had talked about it even being gold-plated and extremely well run. We had actually turned and tried to treat a public railroad like a private enterprise and look at its core business processes. My commitment is that I will work with the state of Connecticut. I look forward to our relationship going forward. Jim Redeker and I have had many conversations even through this first storm. It has been quite an interesting week to start, and I'm looking forward to the challenges ahead, and I'm very, very grateful to the governor for taking time today to meet with us.
So for those watching, the references to Jim Redeker as our own commissioner who is frontline in our relationship with both the MTA and the Metro-North. With that, I'll take some questions. Joe and I had a discussion. We had initially requested kind of a 30, 60, 100-day timeline of what we can expect on the improvement side with respect to reliability and safety. As a result of our 1-hour discussion, we've agreed to give, that Joe said he was working on a 100-day plan on how he was going to turn a number of issues around, that he reasonably thought he could have that within a couple of weeks. And so we're agreeing that that 100-day plan needs to come forward, and that that needs to be a very public discussion with respect to what his expectations are with respect to what he'll accomplish in that 100-day period of time.
Correct me if I'm wrong, that they're scheduled to testify before the Transportation Committee at the Legislative Office Building next week?
They are indeed. There are a number of things going on. We'll have, we're participating, Jim Redeker is participating in an event which the MTA will also be represented at. We've had a discussion about the MTA making itself available in Connecticut on an ongoing and regular basis. So a lot of that will probably be spoken about in that plan.
Can you talk about sufficient leverage under the current contract? There's been criticism that there are not performance standards, there are not penalties for non-compliance. Do you have a feeling that, in a broader sense, that contract and the framework has to be changed?
You know, as I understand the framework, and as you know, this was entered into a long time ago, when actually, I guess, around the time that I was a regular user of the line in 1983. It's up for renewal every 5 years. If the parties disagree on renewal, it goes to arbitration. We have gone to arbitration in the past. As a result, we pay some additional dollars, but I think we've paid that without commensurate additional reliability. Now, I have to say that they were doing a pretty good job for a period of time and have fallen off a cliff. The question is how quickly can this new leadership team, and both Mr. Prendergast and Joe are relatively new, Joe's very new in his position, how quickly can they restore that? And I think that that's a very real interest. I want to go back to your question. How much leverage do we have? We don't have a whole lot of leverage, Pass. The reality is when this agreement was entered into, the mere fact that in the absence of an agreement it goes to arbitration speaks to the lack of pressure that either side can necessarily put on the agreement. As you know, we do share that border and therefore share that track system. I have spoken about, and I meant it, and have agreed with and directed Commissioner Redeker to prepare an RFP for the operation of the New Haven to Springfield line, which we will be reintroducing for commutation purposes. And I think that demonstrates our willingness to look at other options, and in that process to understand perhaps what other people's good view of good service is.
When is the option on the New Haven line?
We have another year or plus to run before that period would be reached.
What can people on Metro-North expect in 100 days? I mean, what areas?
I think a communications plan. I think promised delivery dates on improvements in the Bronx, which is causing a delay. improvements that we believe they should be in a position to make sometime in the spring, have completed sometime in the spring, so that we could recover some of the travel time. We will speak on our side in Connecticut about the walk bridge and the catenary system and a specific target date for when those projects will be completed. But our biggest problem for most people, that the complaints that we're getting have to do with travel being slowed substantially in the Bronx. I think a better and clearer view of what the future of the railroad is, how money is going to be spent, how services and reliability and safety are going to be improved. So let's be very clear. That's what the 100-day plan better have in it.
You mentioned independent sign-off on any major projects.
Review.
Who's going to be doing that?
Well, that will be subject to an agreement, but it will be a third party. And when I say what we're talking about is anything that could impact or take the system down. For instance, what we experienced on the New York side of the work being done with respect to re-energizing the system, as opposed to how we did it in Connecticut. For instance, I think triple redundancy as opposed to simply redundancy might be the marker of the day. It probably will be a different third party depending on the nature of the contract. It'll probably be done on a contractual basis as these projects are taken on. So if you take on a major project that calls for repowering at a particular station as part of that contract, or as an addition to that contract, a third party would have to be hired to do that independent review. Okay? Right back. Oh, I'm sorry.
Governor, the Federal Railroad Administration has done a deep dive. This has been going on for the last 2 months. Do we know when that report's going to come out?
It remains to be seen how deep it is, quite frankly. Since we've had almost no communications on the matter, it's hard, and I will not vouch for how deep that dive will be. So like yourself, I'll await receiving the report to understand how deep it is. Having said that, without a lot of input, for instance, by our commissioner and others, I remain skeptical. Yes?
Governor, how are you going to be judging these benchmarks that they're supposed to be reaching over 100 days?
Well, again, I'll just go back to what I said, is that Joe has promised to deliver a 100-day plan in a very short time frame. You'll have it, I'll have it, we'll all have it, and we'll all hold them accountable for it. I think that my charge to my own DOT within the state will be to help me hold them responsible, to point out the wins and point out the losses. And maybe that's part of the problem with the MTA, is that for too long everyone's been more than willing to take credit for the wins without sufficient owning up to the losses. And so we need to change that mindset, and that's what we're going to set about doing, at least with respect to operations here in Connecticut.
And just briefly, I just
Sure.
want to understand how big of a stick do you actually have regarding the contract? Because wasn't there legislation in 2006 that the legislature mandated that the Department of Transportation go out to bid on the New Haven Springfield line?
I think there may have been mandates that were not consistent with what the actual relationship is between the parties, and so we'll try to do a little background on that. For instance, there have been disagreements that have gone to arbitration in the past.
The New Haven Springfield line, though, what about did you discuss going to another vendor if this plan?
That's the nature of an RFP, is that we would go to a different. No, that's not what I've said. What I've said is, with respect to up to a 50-train commutation network in and out of New Haven from Hartford and Springfield, that we will invite Amtrak to bid, or make a response. We'll invite Metro-North to make a response. We'll invite other parties to make a response. And I think in that way, we'll have a chance to look at how others would promise to deliver service. Having said all of that, this would be better if Metro-North got its act together and recovered the confidence of its ridership here in Connecticut. Right here.
How did this get so bad? What oversight was missing that this many problems and this many structural defects went on for so long?
You know, we had that discussion in my office, and I don't know how they allowed it to get to this point, quite frankly. But both, yeah, I haven't stopped you. Let's be sure, this is not about me protecting them day. It is about us holding them accountable day. I just think they lost sight of some things, and perhaps in a rush to deal with some issues, they forgot how to communicate with our ridership. I think having put so much emphasis on on-time performance, perhaps they took their eye off of safety and reliability for a period of time. We talked about that. You know, I think that that's the job of the federal authorities who are looking at specific things that happened, several of those being in Connecticut, the death of a workman, our own derailment here in Connecticut, other things that have happened including the death of 4 people in New York State. Something happened, something gave, and what we're in the process of doing is trying to restore the confidence of the people of Connecticut and its ridership here in Connecticut. Sure. Sure.
Was there any discussion regarding representation on the MTA board? Because some of us were surprised to learn that the state may not have a voice.
That was not a discussion item today. I will tell you that I think Mr. Prendergast and I have probably had more communication between a governor of Connecticut and an MTA chairman than any other administration. So we're going to keep that going.
Where we are with Metro-North today and its management and the issues that have come to the fore, first with the Bridgeport derailment, then with the employee fatality, and the 2 derailments in Spite and Dival, is something that has transpired over a period of time. I believe when you take a look, when the final NTSB reports are completed, and they take generally up to a year to complete, notwithstanding the fact if they think we need to take actions immediately, they give us those recommendations and we do, you'll find that it's seeded in a number of different areas. One of them is a 30-year. Metro-North basically was created as an organization in 1983, and there was an exodus of a number of key people over a period of time after 30 years, because 30 years is kind of a magic date in railroad retirement. There was also some issues with respect to track. That was one of the reasons why we brought in the Transportation Test Center. They're a premier Class 1 railroad firm that would come in and take a look at our maintenance practices in the area of track, because certainly that was one of the issues that was related as a potential causal factor in the NTSB investigation, which is still ongoing up at Bridgeport. There are other issues in terms of IG reports, in terms of employees being off the job doing other things. So when you put that all together, there's a breakdown in management, especially in that one area. In other areas, maybe not so the case. But that kind of degradation occurs over time, but they manifest themselves generally down the road. We have had a tremendous number of those incidents. It's not by coincidence. There's something going on in the organization. There's some management and cultural issues, and I think we'll find those, we'll root them out. It starts with the selection of a chief executive who understands the importance of those, who understands the importance of critical maintenance and adherence to rules, and we'll be able to sort those things out. We stand aligned with the governor in making those changes. I know there's been questions raised about the issue of the contract. The New Haven line extends all the way through New York, and we pick up people in New York, and the on-time performance on the New Haven line affects Connecticut residents as well as New York residents. It's nothing in our interest other than to restore that performance to where it was, which was best in class in the industry, and we need to get it back to that point. No, for the most part, from the first capital program at the MTA in 1982, we have focused on state of good repair, especially for safety and reliability, critical replacement of components, whether they be track, signals, cars, etc., and the adherence to maintenance standards. We certainly had some things that were identified after Bridgeport that raised questions about the adherence to maintenance standards that we need to deal with. But in terms of investment in the infrastructure, that's something we have done and we will continue to do, and we stand united with Connecticut to do that.
Will you be talking in your
There was a woman behind you that had a question. Go ahead.
Concerning labor, you referenced the IG report, Long Island Railroad, of course, 500-0 strike vote. There seem to be some labor issues. But will your 100-day report, although it doesn't directly affect service and safety, does have some underlying issues? Will your 100-day report to the governor go into your labor relations?
the labor issues that you're referring to refer to the other railroad at the MTA, which is Long Island Railroad.
The strike vote, not the
The strike vote was taken at the Long Island Railroad, not Metro-North.
We're talking about the Inspector General.
All I'm saying is the nature of labor relations are such that the work rules, the relationship we have with the railroad unions at Metro-North are significantly different than they are. We have worked together with the unions. One of the historic things about Metro-North is a close working relationship with the unions. They stand united with us in terms of bringing back the performance to where it was. Yes, ma'am?
Let me just say on that particular point, some of you were with me a couple of Sundays ago when we, 3 Sundays, I guess, when we were in New Haven. At that time, several of the union leaders made a point of coming to the station to talk to me about their desire to turn this around and their willingness to work night and day to see this, this work be gotten done, and that is this restoration of reputation, of on-time performance, of reliability, and of safety. I think we do have a different situation here in Connecticut. I think these are a bunch of people who've been under a lot of pressure and want to get back in the and have the support of the people who use the railroad that they're charged with maintaining and running. So on a rank and file basis, I have to say that I was quite encouraged that their union leadership would take the time to talk to myself about that issue the day we were there. Okay?
I have a question for the MTA.
Sure. And I just want to go back to that. I have never, in my entire career, in the MTA or any of its agencies, seen a union member, even if there are outstanding collective bargaining negotiations going on, do something to hurt the integrity of the organization or to affect the safety or reliability of the services we operate. I've never seen it.
Quite frankly, no, but listen, this was rescheduled because we had some snow occurrences. And by the way, if we had rescheduled it tomorrow, we might have a snow occurrence that would schedule it. So this was the next available date when I could be, the Lieutenant Governor, myself, and the folks could be here. So if I'm making you work on a day you didn't want to work, I apologize. But let me assure you, people watch the news and read the papers every day. Okay, I understand, but. You're doing a good job of it.
Well, most of the customers are downstate in New York.
But I think you're missing.
Critics are saying, are they purposely dodging the larger media, New York? They don't want to talk to us.
Only if the MTA has created a snow machine would that be the case. Okay.
Mr. Prendergast, there is a Connecticut commuter that's new and they posted this commuter manifesto. But part of it does go to that previous question about transparency and openness. Do you plan on also changing your media relationship to have more regular updates, whether it be in New York or in Connecticut?
One of the items that was discussed, and the governor mentioned it, was just that, a need to make sure that we're positively and aggressively going out with good news as well as bad news and keeping the riders informed on an ongoing basis. We have committed to the quarterly meetings in response to a question raised by the governor in terms of going out and meeting the people. There's a lot to be said to listen to the customers' concerns and respond to them. And we will commit to that. We have committed to that. And you'll definitely see Joe out there, and I'll be out there at some of these as well.
How do you two commute to work, by the way? I don't mean that to be quite the smart alecky question you sound like, I'm curious.
I live in Brewster, New York, and I commute to work half to 2/3 of the time on Metro-North. Other times I drive in. It depends on the nature of my day, whether I have a late evening event. I'll let Joe speak for himself.
I committed to the chair that the first year I would like to be in Manhattan, so that way there I can get right over there. I'll be using public transportation to get over into the workplace. Beyond that, it'll be a decision after we've gotten a hold of a few of the issues and we've been able to move it forward. But for the time being, for the first year, it's going to be critical that I'm able to be there with every one of the issues.
All the focus has been on MTA, Metro-North. Is there anything Connecticut isn't doing to hold up its end as far as infrastructure, investments, and so forth? In your view, either one of you
When we've had a need for resources, when we've had a need, it depends on the administration, but there was a commitment to buy the M8s. It was an very exceptionally strong commitment, something very important to us. For the time I've been chairman, which is confirmed chairman since June 20th of last year, but acting interim executive director January 1st of last year, we've had a need for resources. We've asked for it. Connecticut has delivered it.
All right, listen, last question before we wrap it up. And I'll actually tell you a suggestion that Jim Redeker made to our colleagues, and that is on their website, it's hard to register a complaint. And we have made a suggestion that they have a complaint button right on the front of the website so that you don't have to go through everything to find out how to file a complaint. You go right to it and file a complaint. We believe that if they did that, they would be hearing more, in fact, that they'd be hearing directly from their customers as opposed to groups that say they are representing them. And we would like them to actually do that, so they promised to take a look at that. Final question.
Who's going to be representing him tomorrow night at the forum?
Who are the two people that are coming from the...
Wednesday and Stanford, the two forums that are coming up this week. Who's going to be there?
John Kesich, who's the General Vice President of Operations, and Sue Doring will both be there in the meeting tomorrow evening.
Mr. Giulietti, is there something you can tell riders about the future?
Good.
I would say to them that for the riders that were there, on Friday I was out there on the floor. I was there when we made the decisions to run extras. We ran 21 extra trains on Friday even though we were out of Saturday service, that our first priority was and always will be to provide a safe service. We did everything we could to make sure, because it's very hard balancing the demands of a storm coming in and how it's going to hit, but we did everything to ensure that we could put out as much service as was safe, and that we did everything to make sure that people were not stuck out on our main lines and being able to get back in. And I was in constant communication with my chair and the MTA and with the state of Connecticut on that. You can be assured that that will be the case, in the same way that I was out on the floor on Friday and I was down on tracks 20 and 21 to go and see those people move from one track to the other as we loaded those trains going forward. I will be there. My position has always been it's much better to go out there and face your critics, okay? And I've gotten a very clear message from the governor here, and I intend to follow through with that.
Thank you. All right, thank you all very much. Okay.